Am I the asshole for telling my brother I'm not babysitting his kids anymore after they ruined my New Year's plans? Whenever my brother, 27M, needs help, I take care of his two kids, 4F and 6M. Even though I love my niece and nephew, New Year's Eve was the last blow for me. My brother and his wife asked me to watch their kids while they went to a fancy New Year's party. Friends begged me to go with them even though I already had plans with other people. They said they couldn't find anyone else. It was even an offer to pay me twice what I normally get, so I reluctantly agreed. They were supposed to come back at 1 a.m., so I could still hang out with my friends late at night. However, they did not show up at midnight. I texted, called, and even tried calling the party location, but no one answered. They finally got in around 4 a.m., and it was clear they were drunk. They pretended it wasn't a big deal. My brother laughed when I told him how upset I was that they had left me all night and said, "You didn't have anything important going on anyway." That hurt a lot. I told him they could no longer have me watch if they couldn't respect my plans or time. It's making my brother mad, and he says I'm being too tough. AITA because she wouldn't watch after this. Edit. I canceled my New Year's Eve party after overhearing friends talking badly about me. It might make me the asshole because I left my other friends without plans last minute and didn't directly address the issue with the ones who upset me. Comment. NTA, absolutely not. They have been taking advantage of you and bullying you to meeting their needs. They clearly have very little respect for your time. They are being self-centered right now. They are going to come at you with how hard it is to be a parent and how you just don't understand. How can you be so selfish? Don't fall for any of it. It is all tactics used to manipulate you so that they can get what they want. Stand firm. If you never want to watch them again, don't. They will figure it out. They will be mad for a while, but they will get past it. If you do want to, but actually want boundaries, you can try something like, "I had plans that I was excited about. I gave them up so that you two could have a night with the agreement that I would be able to catch the tail end of the party that I missed for you. You not only did not bother to come home on time, but you completely disregarded me or what we had agreed on. You went no contact, came home, and blew me off. You have forgotten that what I do for you is a favor, not my responsibility. You are treating me like I am not important, and what I need has no real value because you and your needs are more important than mine. Until you can apologize for treating me with such little respect on New Year's, I will not be watching the kids. If you want to apologize and recognize that I am helping you because I chose to, not out of obligation, we can try again, so long as I am respected and shown gratitude. Entirely up to you." Then I would leave it. It is up to them. If anyone brings it up, you have the same response on repeat, every time. They were super late on New Year's and ruined my plans. I have simply asked for an apology and a thanks for babysitting. I don't not believe that is asking too much, so I'm going to wait for that. That is really the only thing stopping this from being over. If it is either of them, you just change the first word you, and you are good to go. But don't back down. Don't get caught up in the emotion of it. Stay steady. Be super repetitive in your response. You deserve to be respected. You have done absolutely nothing wrong. Any guilt you start to feel is them manipulating you. It's not real. Guilt only comes when you do something that does not align with your values. Like if you had screamed at the kids, you would rightfully feel guilty for doing so. What they do to try and get their way is trying to generate guilt. Don't let them. NTA. They are irresponsible for basically ruining your night for no other reason than they could whilst forgetting the fact that they are parents. They also ignored your attempts to contact them multiple times in multiple ways. What if you would have needed help or their kids would have needed help as well? What if something had happened to them while they were out, or something had happened to their kids? Firm boundaries means firm rules if you agree to ever babysit again, and letting everyone know what those rules are in case they are so flipping happy to break them again. NTA. Your brother is facing a natural consequence that if he isn't a reliable parent and doesn't respect your time when asking you to babysit, you cannot babysit. That's an extremely reasonable boundary for you to draw. The icing on the cake is that, rather than be apologetic or promise not to let it happen again, not that it should have happened the first time, he just laughed it off and tried to tell you you didn't have anything better to do. So on top of acting entitled, He wants to denigrate you into feeling like you don't have a right to be upset. They are huge AHs. Let them enjoy finding another sitter for the foreseeable future. Update 1. My brother didn't say anything more after I made my request, but I could feel the anger boiling in his eyes. He stood still for a long moment, not responding, then suddenly turned around and walked away, leaving me standing there with a sense of emptiness. I had hoped that I could resolve everything smoothly, but now I realize I've stepped into a situation that I can't easily escape. The next day, my brother didn't text or call me. I tried to act like nothing happened, continuing with my work and personal plans. But inside, there was a tension I couldn't shake. Last night, I asked myself many times whether I had done the right thing, whether I had been too harsh. After all, they're family, and I didn't want to ruin this relationship. However, 3 days later, he called me. His voice wasn't as soft as before, but tense. "I didn't think you would handle this like this," he said. "You're making everything more complicated. The whole family thinks you're overreacting." I could feel the anger in his words, but I couldn't stop anymore. "You can't keep taking advantage of my time like this," I replied, my voice trembling, not out of fear, but because I was so exhausted. "What's more important, family or mutual respect? I had my own plans and don't want you making me feel like this anymore." I waited for a response, but instead, he just stayed silent. That silence dragged on for so long, it felt like I had just inflicted a wound that couldn't be healed. When he hung up, I sat there, sighing, filled with inner conflict. I had done the right thing, but I also felt a sense of loss. These conversations weren't what I had hoped for, but I couldn't keep living in the shadow of blind sacrifice for others. The tension between us wasn't just from me not watching the kids anymore, but also from the realization that I needed to change the way I viewed this relationship. Update 2. The next day, as I was preparing for a quiet evening, free from my brother or anyone bothering me, my phone buzzed. This time, it was a message from my brother's wife, and I immediately knew this wasn't good news. She said we needed to talk. Without any further explanation, I felt a wave of anxiety rush over me. I had thought everything had calmed down, but now the tension was rising again. I took a deep breath, controlled my emotions, and replied that I would come to meet them. When I entered my brother's house, the atmosphere was so heavy it felt like it could be cut. My brother and his wife were sitting across from each other, their eyes not on me, but looking down at the table as though deep in thought. At that moment, I knew I couldn't back down. "We need to clear this up," my brother said, his voice more firm than ever. "We've been very disappointed in the way you've treated us. You're family, and we always thought you'd be the one willing to help. But now, you're making us feel like we don't matter." I sat down, not taking my eyes off him. "You don't understand. I can't keep letting you take advantage of my time like this. Yes, I love the kids, but I also have my own life, and I am not your family's nanny." His wife interrupted me. "Really? You can't help just a little? How can you be so selfish when the whole family needs you?" She almost shouted, her eyes red. I didn't expect her to react so strongly, but her anger only made things worse. "This isn't selfishness," I replied, feeling my patience running thin. "I'm tired of always putting myself aside for you. Things can't always revolve around you. I have the right to have my own time. I'm not invisible, someone you can command whenever you need." An extended silence followed, and then my brother stood up. "Then never help us again," he said, his voice dry, cold as a knife. "We don't need you. Thank you for everything you've done, but if you want to make everything so difficult, then forget it." The lump in my throat left me speechless. I stood up, turned, and walked out without saying another word. From that moment, I knew that this relationship would never be the same. As I walked outside, the cold air of New Year's Eve hit my face, but there was no freshness in it. Everything seemed to freeze, as if I had stepped onto a road with no turning back. The endless conversations, the accusations, had created a wound that would be hard to heal, and I knew there was no way to mend this relationship without a major change. I walked alone down the empty road, with nowhere to turn back to, only thoughts, only unanswered questions. Update 3. 3 days after the argument, an unexpected event happened, turning everything upside down. I was at home, preparing for a quiet evening as usual, when my phone buzzed. This time, it was a message from my brother's wife, and I immediately felt a wave of anxiety. I didn't know what they wanted to talk about, but I knew I couldn't delay. "Can you help your brother with something?" Her voice sounded panicked, completely different from the coldness before. "He's in trouble. You need to come right now. Don't ask questions. He can't reach anyone except you." My heart started racing at those words. I didn't know what had happened, but if he needed me, I couldn't say no. I quickly drove to my brother's house, filled with mixed emotions. A part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing by coming here, but the other part just wanted to know what had happened to make my brother and his wife act like this. When I arrived, the door to my brother's house was open, and I walked inside. The scene inside left me stunned. My brother was sitting on a chair, holding his head in his hands, his face covered in bruises. His wife was standing nearby, pale and frantic. The whole atmosphere was filled with tension and fear. "He had an accident," my brother's wife said, her voice choked with emotion. "He was hit by a car while driving home, and now he can't do anything for himself. You're the only one who can help us right now." I stood frozen, not knowing how to react. At that moment, I couldn't think clearly. I had been angry with him, but seeing him like this, all the anger in me suddenly disappeared. "Is he seriously hurt?" I asked, worried, trying to stay calm. "It's not too serious, but he still needs care, especially in the next few days. We can't ask anyone else. Everyone's busy. You're the only one who can help us right now," my brother's wife replied, her eyes full of pleading. I couldn't do anything but agree. Even though my heart wasn't completely healed from the previous argument, I knew I had to do the right thing in this situation. I couldn't let him suffer alone when he needed help. In the following days, I took care of the kids and helped his wife get everything organized. We didn't talk much about the past, but each time I looked into his eyes, I knew he understood the change. My brother seemed to realize that what I had done wasn't out of selfishness, but because I needed respect and my boundaries needed to be accepted. When my brother started to recover, he took the initiative to apologize. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. You're the only one I can rely on when things get tough," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Though I felt lighter in my heart, I still knew that our relationship would never be the same. Perhaps events like this were necessary for us to learn the lessons of respect and love. But at least I had proven to him that I was not someone who could be taken advantage of forever. Update 4. After days of caring for my brother and helping his family, I felt a small but noticeable change in our relationship. My brother expressed remorse and realized that love and support are not about unconditional sacrifice, but mutual respect. Although things could never go back to how they were before, we had passed an important turning point, finding a new balance in our relationship. When he fully recovered, we sat down and talked about everything. He admitted that he had taken my feelings and time for granted simply because I was the only one without a family of my own, and he had abused that without realizing it. I couldn't hide the hurt I felt, but I also understood that sometimes painful events are necessary for people to realize the value of things that seem obvious. "I've learned a valuable lesson," he said, his eyes sincere. "Thank you for being there for me, even though you had every right to refuse." Though a part of me still felt sad, I knew that at least my family would never again see me as someone who only sacrifices for them without being reciprocated. We began to respect each other more, and our conversations became more open, no longer filled with heavy silences or reproaches. Since then, I've learned an important lesson. Sacrifice doesn't always lead to positive outcomes. Respect and understanding each other's boundaries are what make relationships enduring. And with family, I've learned that love isn't always about giving without expecting anything in return, but about sharing and respecting what each person has. My relationship with my brother has now entered a new phase, with maturity and understanding from both sides. Update 5. As time passed, everything began to settle down. The relationship between my brother and I has improved. Although things will never be the same as before, where I was always the one being asked to help whenever needed, at least we have found a new understanding. He no longer sees me as the backup when his family is short of a babysitter. Both of us have started to set boundaries and respect each other's space. Even so, I still agree to help him take care of the kids when he genuinely needs it. Though not as often as before, whenever I visit, there is no longer any sense of coercion or reproach. It's just simple afternoons, sitting and playing with the two kids, listening to their laughter and stories. In those moments, I feel an odd sense of peace. Things aren't always perfect, but it seems like my family has learned to appreciate each other more. One afternoon, when I visited to take care of the kids, I heard their joyful laughter echoing in the living room. Simple moments like that made me realize that, although I'm no longer the one always willing to sacrifice everything for my family, I still love them, and sometimes help, even if not frequent, holds more value when it's not taken for granted. And no matter how life changes, I know that every person in the family needs to learn how to take responsibility and respect others. These acts of help are no longer obligations, but choices, a way to maintain a healthy relationship where everyone truly understands and values each other. Although we don't talk much about the past anymore, I can feel that we are moving forward, not by forgetting our mistakes, but by learning and growing from them. When I see the kids playing happily under my care, I know I've done the right thing.